Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. It's been the strangest of summers, what with the pandemic, lockdowns, and now even reports that the salmon runs have been the best in years. Was it because the rivers and lakes had been rested earlier in the year, but do we still need to preach caution that one swallow does not a summer make, and that the decline in salmon stocks is still terminal? Noel Carr, National Secretary with FISSTA, the Federation of Irish Salmon and Sea Trout Anglers, joins me on this week's episode to discuss the green shoots from the summer runs, whilst also outlining the more deep-seated problems and threats that still exist in the fight for our wild salmon.
Apart from the 2007 summer, we thought we haven't seen anything of a resurgence in returns since then. And we welcomed it. It was great to see it. Early spring had a good few signs, but at the time we said one swallow doesn't make a summer. Then it continued into June. The wet weather in July brought, abundance really that we haven't seen in a while, especially, and it's lovely to see them coming back that early, even in July, especially the grills, because they were used at this time of year to come in very poor shape and forms. We used to call them here sharpening stones because they were the small, thin, scrawny quality of fish at that stage, and they were coming back from feeding grounds that weren't able to support them, in the past. And at many of the NASCO conferences since really the 2010 onwards period, we were hearing that the feeding wasn't there in the grounds that in actual fact used to traditionally support good quality fish coming back. So from that point of view, yes. Now, we still have had a good July and a great July and a good August, but really the back end fish towards the end of September, the last month of the season, is where in actual fact we will be the acid test to see if this is going to continue for this season. But so the jury really is still out for a while, and we will need a number of continuous seasons.
Are you looking out for come the kind of back end of the season? Are you looking for kind of just the numbers to hold up? Are you looking for a decent increase?
Yeah, well, it's what we always wish for, to see them salmon clearing the falls, at the crucial time of the year, really September, when in actual fact they will go to the they're almost certain, a high number of them will find their spawning grounds, but really what we have got to do here really is do a number of things, because there are political implications of this here. We've seen the fishery boards, IFI, coming out with, heralding the announcement that they were coming back, in the numbers there were, which was good. We agreed, we welcomed, but we must be very careful not to be complacent, and that it's a reason to do nothing else now, because in actual fact, at this stage, we were campaigning strongly to increase the habitat enhancement programs within our 147 salmon rivers that in actual fact, well over 100 are closed to taking a fish, and the rest have quotas, some that may not, we're on the downward trend for the future. Like the jewel in the crown is the Moy, and therefore, they have gone from 25,000 fish down to, in the mid 12,000 at the moment, in quotas. So we're losing our capacity to spawn much greater than what in actual fact we need to, work at, because Mother Nature in the past, allowed us just nearly to do very little, only get the water quality right, and think a number of issues like that. But now, it basically means that we, in our federation of 90 clubs, must up our game to tell our Inland Fisheries Ireland, to tell our scientists what in actual fact is happening, but much more importantly, to politically lobby for a better programme of enhancement for the future, along with the habitat enhancement in the North Atlantic as well, where the feeding grounds are. And really, the good news from that point of view is now that we have seen one season with fish coming back in high quality condition, like sometimes they're almost maybe a kilogram or two, definitely a couple of pounds over the average that we used to get. And much more importantly, they are in supreme condition as well. That proves that there is work in the feeding grounds, and or there is food there, to sustain the fish, migrating smolts going out. But much more importantly, I think the protection program to pay off the commercial fishermen in Greenland and Faroes is what really is making the difference now after the 2018 agreement was signed.
With the Greens in government, with Eamon Ryan there, are you hopeful that there be a sea change in attitude towards the environment and towards fisheries?
Yes, we're very hopeful this time. This is actually the most hopeful time for salmon since 2007. 2006, November, Noel Dempsey, Fianna Fáil minister, actually announced the buyout. But implementing the buyout at the time was a major, was going to be a major achievement. And in 2007 June election, the Greens went into government with Fianna Fáil, if you remember. And lo and behold, Eamon Ryan became Minister for Communications, Energy and Natural Resources under that government. And thankfully, the implementation of that buyout at the time was huge, was successful to the extent. Now, there was a number of tricks pulled that time that we weren't happy with, but overall, the 1,500 drift netsmen were bought out, and a very small commercial quota was left from the draft net site. But that aside, that the drifting part of the commercial catch was taken out of it, and that was a major achievement that was done under Eamon Ryan. Secondly, political consequences at the time. Obviously, the financial crisis struck 2010 and they were gone. But the good news from our point of view is that not alone is Eamon Ryan back again as leader of the Green Party and negotiated in their campaign manifesto last January, they actually included the salmon, the first political party ever to do that, and to say no new fish farm licenses under their program. So not alone is the minister returned in having served his apprenticeship in 2006 to 2010, he's much more aware than any other politician in the cabinet about the salmon. And from that point of view, the Green Party have always been good to the wild Atlantic salmon, and we're hoping that this continues now. It's not nearly as much about the finance and the investment, but much more important is for a minister to understand what needs to be done now to get the numbers increased, and hopefully, we can say in a couple of years' time that yes, the decisions made now and made in 2007 are just starting to pay off now.
I think the flip side as well of the pandemic this summer, and I don't know whether you've seen it where you are now up in Donegal, is that people are kind of starting to appreciate nature more and wildlife. And I know even in the UK there was a surge in fish licenses being sold. Are you seeing that as well? That like people are kind of turning back to nature and what's around us?
Yeah, we're seeing that all the time. As a matter of fact, the big argument if we go back to 2005, 2006, when in actual fact we formed the lobby, Stop Salmon Drift Nets now, we actually, the biggest impediment to that implementation of that campaign request was coming from obviously the commercial side of the fishermen. But once they saw the figures and the money, because they weren't getting much anyhow on that there, the government at the time, and Dermot O'Hearn wrote about it at the time, he was Minister for Foreign Affairs, they were worried about the backlash from the voter in that election. As a matter of fact, that decision greatly enhanced their party image, because they actually got a big nature bounce out of it, and along with the Green Party, for actually saying that in actual fact we are saving the salmon, we are actually improving the habitat. And that in 2007, that actually was a big learning curve for an existing government. Even Fine Gael and Labour that actually acknowledged this at the time, they didn't think there was going to be such a positive bounce from it. So therefore, going back to that time, right through the noughties, right through now to 2020, we have seen, that there is a greater appreciation. Obviously, the climate change issue is massive, and the Green Party hence gets 12 seats. But I would like to think some of those seats were got as well, in the last, few votes from anglers voting for a pro-salmon policy. And that's actually happening. Now, fast forward pandemic-wise, and we have a lot of, because of the nature of angling, probably golf as well to the social distance side, but I don't know what that's like, but definitely we have a lot more people visiting our rivers. Maybe not just fishing, but definitely walking, definitely aware. And when they actually see salmon clearing, a falls, they're definitely, much more, inclined to take that nature walk rather than one up a mountain or something like that. So from our point of view, we are seeing a lot more participation in outdoors in the valleys. And okay, that's good. And much more importantly, from an angling point of view, we're getting a lot more interest. And if you notice for example, the angling magazines are gone, in a quarterly basis at the moment. And we're getting quite a lot of feedback saying this is the time they should be, not bi-monthly, but monthly, they should be coming out, because the insatiable appetite for all things angling and the promotion of angling spots and, safe places to go fishing as well. Is the demand has never been more popular, So thankfully, we're seeing a huge participation in the sport this year, to the extent that we have quite a number of inquiries on our rivers. And many of them would be closed even to catch and release, but they just want to know what the status of the river is and how can we get it back to the quality that will be, the Standing Scientific Committee will rule next year that it will be open to take to go fishing on, because at the moment we are still, in the recovery ward with regards quite a lot of our salmon rivers.
I want to talk about the environment, Noel, and fish farming, because obviously it's been one of the kind of keystones in terms of your campaigning against. You see what happened in Scotland, and you get the sense over here that there was an appetite to increase fish farms in terms of, they looked at job creations, local factors affecting the economy, all that kind of stuff, versus the environmental impact. Do you think the appetite for increasing fish farming industry is still going to go ahead in the foreseeable at a political national level?
Yeah, we can't stop an industry that's been there since the 80s, really, started since the 80s. We can't do that. But what we can do is regulate them in such a way that wild salmon habitat doesn't suffer. It's not at the expense of our wild Atlantic salmon. That's all we wanted from the very beginning. And God rest T.K. Whitaker, even though, he saw an industry survive, and like at the time Founded Fish, going from strength to strength, because the demand in the market for salmon has to be met one way or another. But our argument basically was that it shouldn't be at the expense of the wild. And that has continued. Yes, we go to an international conference every year. Our 90 clubs see it as a very most important part of our duties in the year. And there's an international conference held in various places where the salmon are still surviving. But last year, for example, it was in Norway. This year it was virtual, but we basically come to it and they examine the state of the salmon every year. And way back, I became chairman in 1999 of our federation. We had, in the region of about 40 clubs at that stage in the federation. The most important thing that we have done at that time, we have done since, and at that time, was to actually launch that campaign to be able to say, whatever plans, whatever developments you're doing in open net cage, please, make sure that it doesn't contaminate the waters and increase the sea lice levels that actually jeopardize the migration of our smolts. And really, when our smolts go out into the estuaries and there's a fish cage or a salmon farmed number of cages in the estuary, IFI scientists assess that about 40% of that population of migrating smolts are doomed by the time they get to maybe Rockall or somewhere, because the sea ice has actually killed them, infested them and killed them. So really, we had to take action. And the answer to the question was regards Scotland versus Ireland. Scotland are well over almost the 250,000 tonnes at the moment production. And when we looked at them back in 2001, we met Scottish anglers as well, and we agreed we would all campaign together. The key to the whole program was we would object to new salmon cages in our bays at planning stages. We did that, and at 25,000 tonnes at the time, both Scotland and Ireland were at. Scotland's went 10 times increased. Ireland are down now at average 8 to 10,000. So that's the actions we have done. We've gone through the aquaculture appeals boards. We've gone through the whole process of planning and objected on the basis that they should go onshore with these cages, with these salmon production units. And basically, like a smolt grow through, basically we say there's an RAS recirculating aquaculture systems, basically, that actually sends clean water back out into the Atlantic instead of the contamination of sea lice that's there at the moment. And our campaigns since really 2001, 2002 has actually paid off in that we have managed to reduce the production in the wild estuaries from and by the way, this also contributes greatly to the higher quality of water quality, because really the cages are pollutants in their own right, and the reduction of the numbers, like for example, if we didn't campaign in 2011 to Simon Coveney, who was the Minister for Agriculture at the time, there would be 700 cages in Galway Bay now. 700 coming from from Inisheer out. And really, like, you know, that would be, like, I mean, Galway Bay, the iconic, pristine marine environment where, you know, international conferences on sailing and marine is held. Like, I mean, that would look like a really the sacrificing of our Galway Bay to the industry, you know. So
there's a key though. The key phrase in that answer that you gave me now is saying that the Norwegian government is enforcing this issue on the industry.
Yes, well, there's a department for the environment and there's a department for, you know, agriculture and aquaculture, and one is constantly, you know, like our Department of Environment, or, you know, the equivalent of natural resources versus, you know, aquaculture here, you know. So, but aquaculture and agriculture minister gets all the decisions in their favor. You know, there's no contest between, you know, clean water and, you know, like, I mean, the Farmers IFA, who are actually the representatives and the lobbyers of salmon farming in Brussels, everywhere, like, they are supremely professional in getting as much as possible for their members. And, you know, there's a very strong lobby. And, you know, we've constantly, since the 90s, been up against fighting, you know, the Goliath of that, you know. So we lose hands down in a lot of cases. But the good news from the government's point of view is the industry is coming to them with the solutions. Whereas one time we were looking for the government to, you know, regulate them and stop them from actually getting the, you know, the concessions, you know, at the expense of the salmon consistently. And that's really, you know, what in actual fact, when a member is out angling and saying, you know, we're not seeing any improvements here, what is the cause? Okay, sea lice, you know, is one of them. You know, habitat enhancement is another. They want us as a federation, even though we're just a voluntary body of members, nobody's professional, nobody gets a salary, and everybody volunteers to, you know, in this system. We're not professional, and we should be, to be able to actually counteract what in actual fact is a very lean, mean, effective machine up in the farm centre off the Naas Road, you know. So really, our arguments are principles in that we have to actually keep water clean. We have to actually enhance the environment for a habitat that's, you know, will be conducive to create more salmon. And, you know, to do that very professionally and match the professionalism of maybe of the IFA, we have to be, you know, at the top of our game. And if you actually, for example, you know, look at a working week that we have here, you know, and among our board members, there's 20 of them from all around, dotted all around the major salmon rivers of the country. And like in my particular one this last week was a very serious piece of time needed to be put into a forestry that in actual fact a contractor goes in after 20 years and starts felling trees. But what they did in this case was put a bridge over a river so that they get trees that they felled across to the lorry or whatever. Now, they just blocked a particular river at the time, and when in actual fact, the middle of Storm Francis and Storm Ellen, you know, and put an enormous amount of debris and dirty, mucky, boggy water down into the channels of our salmon river. The damage that this caused at that particular time last week is horrendous. And here, in actual fact, we have to go not just, alert the services of Inland Fisheries Ireland and the Donegal County Council and all the culture and everybody else to the misdemeanor, but basically to try and actually get some sort of rehabilitation for that river that's going to take up to maybe 10 years next, if it ever comes back again, And that's just due to one specific contractor thinking they'll get in and out fast out of an area where in actual fact they're used to dealing with felling trees, but maybe, this river is an impediment to that problem at the moment, so we just drive through it, And that's the kind of thing that actually, we have to be on our game to actually to rectify when it happens, Dara.
Can I ask you, Noel, I'm going to turn to the international focus. You were back, or not back, you attended the NASCO conference virtually from over the summer. What arose from that? And if you might just kind of maybe, was there any kind of insights or learnings?
Yeah, well, our big problem really, or our big issue on everybody's agenda, first of all, our government. The good thing about NASCO, North Atlantic Salmon Conservation Organization Conference, is for every year, it happens the first week in June, for every year, our government and our department under Natural Resources gets a report from Inland Fisheries Ireland and the other agencies like the EPA and with regards to water quality. But actually, anybody that's involved in enhancing the marine or the habitat environment of the salmon. And they give that report as a State of the Salmon in Ireland presentation to the conference. And we actually grade it as sometimes for truth, sometimes for accuracy, but much more importantly, with a means to actually improving it for next year all the time. And these reports are what we call implementation plans, are up on the web, which basically means that everybody can see the pressure we're putting on our state services to improve the wild Atlantic salmon habitat, So from that point of view, there's, where we've been last year and 10 years ago to now, where in actual fact our wild Atlantic salmon are going in numbers. And we're in decline, we've gone from, 40 rivers closed to, over 100 of the 147 now, So, things aren't pretty in the sense that we're definitely losing the battle. So that's why, in actual fact, we go onto the session in the floor and say more can be done, much, much more can be done, and it's needed to be done urgently. And yes, drift netting was a big problem, and since 2007 we've improved, the numbers. Now this year, when we go on next year and see we will know from, as Ken Williams says, we'll get the figures in September, October. But at the same time, we need to see some sort of continuance of maybe 3 or 4 seasons before that happens. But I am convinced that the 2018 agreement between the Atlantic Salmon Federation of Canada and North America and the North Atlantic Salmon Fund, of which we are a founding member, FISSTA is a founding member of it, and we actually were part of the deal signed up to in 2018. And this was a big deal in the sense that the former chairman, who had died in 2015, Ori Vigfusson, nobody knew where was the deal going to continue, because the commercial fishermen needed their money, and it was going to be very hard to fundraise. We asked the Irish government to contribute. They wouldn't. They didn't see the merit in it. Yet maybe now they may see the merit in it when you see the salmon numbers coming back. But in the meantime, we have done our bit to try and actually make sure that the fishermen are paid. And the deal in the Greenland case is for 12 years from 2018. So that's till 2030. Now, that's a major, major achievement. And that's why we're very, very hopeful that this, deal keeps on track, so that we can actually see, from at least the North Atlantic feeding grounds point of view, there is not going to be a problem in the future unless we stop paying them. So from that point of view, yes, NASCO has been very, very helpful to us focusing on getting the lobbying power right. And the EU manages, or speaks as the party for Ireland at the conference. And up until now it'll be different with Brexit now, but the UK and Scotland were part of the EU, and the EU was embarrassed in quite a lot of cases with regards to the unbridled development of salmon farming in Scotland. Going from 25,000 tons in 10 years to actually 250,000 tons showed really the failure of the anglers to stop the lobbying, or that stopped the lobbying at the time. And much more importantly, the industry got every break that they did get, that they sought, and hence the damage that there is to the wild salmon there now.
Looking ahead to 2021 and beyond, what's on the agenda for FISSTA, and what can anglers who are listening to this do to do their bit as well?
Our federation has consistently used the NASCO conference internationally as the measuring stick to measure and also beat our government into actually making decisions that will reduce the impact on the decline of the salmon. So really, for not us to not just attend, but to participate actively and making sure that for example, our NGOs, non-government organizations, there's about 40 of them, but the active ones in each country, especially in Norway, especially in Scotland, especially in Canada, where fish farming is very high, we're very, very effective. We're Ireland and Irish anglers, we're punching way above our weight there, because now that in actual fact, we have this 2018 agreement starting to show good signs of an improvement. What we're saying, don't stop. We're saying, try and actually capitalize on this by getting even greater numbers, because we have still got a long way to go to get back to any form of abundance that is our objective itself, But for an angler, really, he just wants to join his club, and his club then actually register with our federation to actually give us a recognition and allow them to be represented, not just on the local input for a plan with a minister, but for the international plan as well. So I would suggest to them, if they actually looked at the NASCO, and we'll have it up on our website very soon, FISSTA.com, but if they just look at and we're on Facebook as well, the plans and the programs, but that are down the line, which we look for support from our government for, and it's an interesting time in that, one, we now have a positive season, or a part of a season behind us. Hopefully it'll continue this month, to be able to say our policies of the Feeding Grounds North Atlantic Salmon Funds program is working, paying off. Please help us for it to continue. But much more importantly, I think if they can actually, their members can get involved with their local club and look precisely at what's causing the improvement and what's causing the decline, and try more often than not, it's water quality in the freshwater part of the system itself. But there's also the key damaging factors in the estuary with regards to the migrating smolt channel of salmon farming cages there.
Well, hopefully we're seeing the first shoots maybe of hope this summer in the midst of all the doom and gloom of the pandemic. Noel Carr, National Secretary with FISSTA, thanks a million for joining me on the show. And for people who want more information, FISSTA.com, and get involved with your local club really, and see what you can do on the ground where you are fishing really, I suppose is a good way to start. Noel, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, Dara.
My thanks to Noel Carr from FISSTA for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. You can also keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and I'll be back next week with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.